So she says, she sends a letter
Carrie.
informing them that a staff member would not be returning to the school. And she writes, as you know.
Would y'all fire him in that situation? Like, what would y'all do if you were Karen?
Fire this guy for walking the M-bomb. This guy here, he said it in the context of talking about somebody else in history. Okay, then this is where we're going to go, right here. So this guy, Marlon Anderson, security guard at a school district in Madison, Wisconsin, at a high school in Madison, Wisconsin. Some kid in the school is being disruptive. The principal calls for help, calls the school guardians, being like, they're trying to take this guy out of the school. Calls Marlon over, like, Marlon, help out, we got to take this guy out. The kid's fighting, he's like yelling stuff, he's yelling obscenities, and he starts calling this guy the N-bomb. And then Marlon puts up with it. He's like, dude, stop that. As he's like wrestling him out of the building. Stop that, dude, stop calling me that. Stop calling me that word. And he's getting him out of the building. Stop calling me that, come on, man, really, stop. And the two of them, and then finally, Marlon says, stop calling me N-bomb. Got it? Well, what Marlon forgot was the high school has a zero tolerance policy for saying N-bomb. So the kid was going to get expelled, but he gets fired.
Oh.
And the principal comes forward with a statement to people, to all the family members. Here she is, right here. So she says, she sends a letter
Carrie.
informing them that a staff member would not be returning to the school. And she writes, as you know.
Would y'all, I have a question for y'all. Would y'all fire him in that situation? Like, what would y'all do if you were Karen? Me personally, I wouldn't. I honestly wouldn't. But if the school has a zero tolerance policy, like a zero, like, I don't know how strict that rule is, but if it's zero tolerance, I do understand. But I probably wouldn't, you know. But I still don't think it's right to say it, even though, like, I feel like you have to have a level of control in that situation, especially if you're dealing with children. Unfortunately, for all my teachers out there, you have to have a superhuman, crazy monk level of control. But hey, I don't know.
Our expectation when it comes to racial slurs has been made very, very clear. Regardless of context or circumstances, racial slurs are not acceptable in our schools. So, my friends, you want to fire Papa John? You think he should be fired? Well, then he should be fired.
Oh.
Because he broke a zero tolerance policy.
Oh.
Why wouldn't he be fired?
This took a turn.
Oh, well, he can't because it's a little different. What's the difference? It's just as absurd. Really, what's the difference? What's the difference? I'm going to push you on that. I can point the differences. I'm smart enough. I can see that these are different situations and so on, and I'm going to push back and be like, what's the difference? Hang on, this is just rhetorical. And then she is the one that writes the letter saying, sorry, Marlon had to go because he broke our zero tolerance policy. He ultimately got his job back because so many people, including students at the school, were upset and bothered and so on. Same people that didn't come to the defense of John Schneider from Papa John. I'm sure they didn't come to his defense, but they came to his defense.
Honestly, if I'm being completely honest, I don't even know what happened in that Papa John situation. I really don't know, so I'm not going to speak on it. But I will say this. The reason that people are coming to his defense or their defense, actually, I don't even want to say it. Look, man. Hey, I'm just here to watch. Look, man. Sometimes when I watch these type of situations, it is kind of, I guess, ironic because when you have a principal who has a zero tolerance policy, and obviously her decision had nothing to do with his skin color, it was a fair decision, if I'm being honest. I probably wouldn't have made it, but her making it, I can't be mad at it. It's a fair decision. Because the reason I say it's fair is because if the worker wasn't black, if he was a different race, and she made that same decision to fire him, it probably wouldn't have been an issue. But because he was black, I think that's where it could be a disagreement. But if she was to make a decision whether or not to fire or keep him based on his skin color, then that would have probably also been a problem. It's like you can't really win in these situations. So let's just watch. Hey y'all, make sure y'all subscribe to the channel. Don't forget to subscribe.
So this is where we go. This is the world we're gonna go in. If we want to have these kinds of, we're gonna have language police and action police and thought police and so on. You want to walk up that aisle? Well, we're gonna walk up the other aisles also. This is where we're at. And then what's really the problem here? We're not paying attention to racism, as though like Papa John is the problem, as though this guy here is the problem. No, racism and violence against everybody, but disproportionately against people who are black and brown seems to me to be the problem. And against women, I should add. But we get ourselves all rolled up in a ball in all these other ways. So here, I got another one for you. How many know who she is? You see this? This just came out in the news. So a woman says Denver arena guard told her to remove a hijab. So she was going to the arena in Denver to see one of her children was singing in a choir, I think. So she shows up at the arena. And the hijab, from what I could see in the photos, her covering was more or less very similar to this. So she shows up, and the security guard says, as she's walk up toward me, you're going to get in, stop, you can't come in with that, you got to take that off. And then she says, what do you mean I got to take it off? She's like, no, you got to take it off. So she says, I wear this for religious reasons. I don't want to take it off. She says, I don't care why you wear that thing, you're taking it off if you want to come in. It's like, okay. So
yeah, those type of situations, you have to have a level of nuance, or at least try to have an understanding, because when it comes to religion and stuff like that, if you really don't know why they're doing something, just ask someone who's ahead of you. Ask your supervisor, ask your manager, like, is this okay? If you really don't know, but don't just be like, no, I don't care why you're doing it. That's just ignorant. Ask. She
says to the guard, do you think there's a place, and she's with her child, she says, do you think there's a room where we could go, like kind of a secure room that's where I could take it off, and because she's kind of modest about taking her hijab off. And the guard says, no, there's nothing like that. You have to go, and sort of waves her away. So this woman is like, oh my God, what am I going to do? So pretty quickly, this all happens really fast. A guy comes out from in this other area. He walks over, assesses the situation really fast, and apparently pulls the security guard aside, and first off, and then waves her through. Very fast. It's like 30, maybe 40 seconds. And then the security guard comes back out, so they talk to her briefly, and she comes back out and doesn't say anything, doesn't really interact with her, but this woman gets in. She goes through the metal detector. The metal detector goes off because her cell phone was in her pocket, and she had to come back and get the cell phone out and so on, and it was fine. And she gets in. So the whole thing takes an additional maybe 45 seconds or so, not very long. Okay, cool? Got it?
Yeah.
So the idea is the security guard is clearly out of line. And it's a problem because you don't know what hijab is, and you don't understand anything about this head covering and Muslim women and so on. And so, come on, man, are you kidding me? What do you mean? She's coming to you saying it's for religious reasons. What do you know? Like, why aren't you aware? Why don't you know? Why don't you understand what's going on? So then this is a problem. So the Council on Islamic affairs and Islamic American relations, they get involved and they put out press release and, I forget what they said, but, something like, this is just really terrible. This is an indication of what happens to Muslim people and so on. And she didn't make like a major deal over it, but she'd put out a Facebook post and say, hey, this happened to me. And that's how it blew up. And it blew up such that when I went online, when I looked at it, it's everywhere. These are just images, but each one is the same story over and over and over again. Here's the problem with this. Here's what makes it complicated. What do you think about what you're thinking about the security guard? She's a 71-year-old African-American woman. So people are calling for her to be fired, calling for a lawsuit against the Denver Nuggets arena, calling for a lawsuit against the security company, calling for them, all sorts of things happening. The security guard, first off, she's 71 years old.
71-year-old lady. And this is what I'm talking about. As humans, we have to give each other the grace to make mistakes. And I'm not saying the security guard was right. I'm not saying that. But when you heard that story, people already have conceptions on how they think the security guard looks. What percent of people do you think actually looked into what the security guard looks like? They probably thought, you know what, I'm not even going to say it, but they probably thought it was somebody else. All I'm saying is, we have to give humans, each other, the space to be wrong, to make mistakes. Be like, you know what, that situation was wrong, it was handled, it's over. But instead, what happened? The second this type of story happens, people get it and they run with it. They push this narrative. They push the narrative. And it does more harm than good. My objective on this channel, or in general, is to do more good than harm. Rather than looking at this story and saying, no, you hate us. No. It was a situation. A 71-year-old woman didn't know her job. She didn't know. It's an older woman. She's 71. She's probably never seen that. She's just trying to feed her family, probably. Like, oh yeah, they told me not to do this, so I'm not going to do this. Even though she was wrong. It was handled. Her supervisor came over, it was handled. But instead, they just took that story. Now they're trying to sue the team. Like, we have to give each other space to make mistakes. Nobody's perfect.
I'm like, all right, man, you've been on the planet 71 years, but she's not up on hijabs. Can we go back to Papa John? We want to play in that world where you do one thing wrong, and we could even have arguments about what is and isn't wrong. What if he accidentally drops the N-bomb, but he was trying to say another word, and he accidentally said that one, and like, oh my God, how far do we want to go? So if we want to play in that world...
No, and here's my thing. When this type of thing happens, and you are someone like the guy at Papa John's, I don't know what he did, so I'm not even going to speak on him specifically. But when something like that happens, it's like people will give you grace based on how you look. People will give you grace based on how you look, basically. For example, that teacher, he got his job back even though he broke the rules. I'm not saying they were wrong for hiring him back, because I said I would probably hire him back. Probably, I don't know. Like in the older woman, she probably didn't get reprimanded because she's a 71-year-old black woman. But let's say the situations were turned. It feels like sometimes grace is used and sometimes it isn't used. And that's acceptable. But my thing is, you have to understand where someone's heart is. If they're trying to do the right thing, if they're genuinely ignorant on a situation. Where's the nuance? Why don't we treat each other like people anymore? Let's say it was a middle-aged Caucasian man and he said something. Will we look at it differently? That's not fair in my opinion. But life isn't fair, like my father says.
Of utter condemnation for the slightest thing that we do wrong, the slightest mistake we made, well then the black security guards should get fired. The whole Denver organization could get sued. I mean, how far you want to go with it? First off, it's the same thing as the other story. It's like security guard. Can you just Stop with the hand waving and you're not coming in here with that. First off, this woman said there were men in the lobby when they were getting with baseball caps on. Of course, and I'm like, she's not making that shit up because there are men everywhere with baseball. If there are more than 3 men, there's at least 1 baseball cap. So like,
I'm actually wearing a head wrap right now. I don't have a baseball cap on, but yeah, I'm wearing a head wrap right now.
why are they getting in? You know what I mean? Like, come on. Or did you make them all take the cap off and see if there's something under the cap? Did you she's asking, can we go to a private room? Could you maybe we could just, I could take it off. I could show you I don't have anything underneath. No, we can't do that. Okay, so she could have just whipped it off. Like the men probably would just whip their cap off and be like, yeah, see, I'm good. Like, all right, good. But she's not. It's different for her. Wearing a hijab, covering her hair is different than, you wearing the baseball cap or you or whoever. What I'm saying, I don't know. There's nobody's right, nobody's wrong. All I know is when we start pointing our fingers at things, at people, 3 are coming back at us, and it's going to be a problem.
Did this security guard get fired?
Did she get fired?
Yeah.
Nah, they just pull her aside and be like, come on, man.
You know she didn't get fired. What type of question is that? Who's firing a 71-year-old woman? And that's what I'm saying. We will pick and choose who we decide to give grace. Whether a young black man gets pulled over and he don't get no grace by an officer, whether a middle-aged white man says something online where he had no intention of hurting anyone and he gets no grace. We just pick and choose who we decide is acceptable for our forgiveness. That's not right to me. And I'm not saying it happens on a wide level. I'm not saying that. Because I don't know. I didn't look into whether or not the statistics behind this. I didn't. All I'm saying is it happens enough for me to notice it. It happens enough for the students in this class to genuinely be curious on what happened to them. And it happens enough for me to assume that based on how someone looks or how someone acts or where someone's from, whether or not they'll be judged or treated differently based on whether or not they're doing the same actions in the public eye.
Let's bring you up to speed. Here's this thing, it's called a hijab. She was probably like, yeah, I kind of heard of them, but she probably doesn't know any Muslim women. She probably hasn't really thought. It's one of these things, just like he's asking, yeah, but I don't really know about the hijab. So I don't know, can you wear it? Just remember when we talked about hair? And people don't know about hair. They don't know about black hair. They don't know about anything. People don't know about anything, right?
Okay, so I am lucky enough to be enlightened in certain subjects.
No, hang on. Not enlightened. Don't say enlightened.
Okay,
You're
informed.
lucky enough, or by chance,
right,
you know about certain things.
So we'll go with what he said. And I have a couple of things. My first thing is, how do you have an 81-year-old 71 security guard in a athletic
she's not really
arena?
A security guard. I mean, she's not chasing anybody down. Not like this dude or this dude. She's just taking tickets and stuff.
It's like the guy on Barstool, if you ever saw the security guard at Beaver Stadium, who's barely touching the people that he's checking. It's kind of like that, I assume.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, okay.
And when you explaining the situation, I feel like she's 100% wrong, because that's like asking. I feel like there's a lot of prejudice against the hijab, and for someone to ask them to take it off, unless you're in the airport, that's a whole different situation. And
What I would say about 100% wrong, she's 100% wrong based on your level of understanding. Based on my level too. But look at it from this perspective. She's a 71-year-old woman. She's lived for 71 years. She was born in 1950-something. Maybe the 40-something. I don't know. All I'm saying is she's lived this long, and in her life, she may have never even seen that. So imagine this. You live for 7 decades, and you see something completely new, and your job tells you specifically to do this. You already are much older. They tell you do this, don't let this, period. And you see something completely new. What do you do in that situation if you've never seen it? You may do something different based on your level of understanding, but she did something different based on her level of understanding. We think she's wrong, but in her eyes, from her perspective, she was maybe trying to do her job. I'm not saying she is. I'm not defending it, but maybe. So that's all I'm saying. When we judge these situations, have some type of, grace. I think you should have some grace, but y'all may disagree with me. If you do, comment down below.
Me and TSA are not friends, so I'm cool with that.
Yeah, I got it.
But like that's my scenario would be like asking someone to take off their cross because you're wearing a cross, or like the Star of David or something.
Okay, so let me just say the following. That's a really nice response. I will say the following. My imagination of her is actually that it's just as likely, instead of her being like really aggressive and she knows what it is and she's just like F you Muslims or whatever, right? She's actually just totally unknowing about any of it. She's like, no, you're wearing a hat. Like, no, take it off. Like, whatever. She's just as like, whatever. As anything else. It's just as likely that that's very much the story, and we don't know. But
I was just gonna say, like, to answer the question about the hijab, it's like in terms of taking it off. Let's say you get asked to take off your shirt. Like, taking off your shirt isn't necessarily like difficult. It's just like it's exposing. So, like, she wouldn't want to take that off in front of other people, and she might want a private room. Or it's like, let's say a teacher says, take off your hat in class. It's not hard to take off your hat. It's just like you feel exposed when you take it off, so you don't want to take it off in front of
exactly.
people. That's
no,
just what
I
it
think
is.
that's the kind of thing, right? For me, look, y'all, right?
All this stuff be happening. I was in Atlanta TSA. They talking about I was wearing a hoodie. It wasn't even a hoodie. It was like a sweater. They were like, take it off. I'm like, what? Take it off? I'm wearing a tank top. Nah, take it off. Like, bro, this type of stuff happens in TSA. And y'all already know when y'all was in school, the teachers, if you was wearing anything on your head, it's coming off. Period. No hoodies, no nothing. Period. Nothing. So, yeah, I do understand, like, that level of exposure. Is that the word? I hope so.
Yins, for the Pittsburgh folks, yins. What this class is about is an opportunity to touch on lots and lots of different things so that we don't become the security guard. It seems really obvious to me, but it's not obvious to everybody.
I really like this professor, man. I really do. Like, and I don't necessarily agree with everything he says, but what I do like about him and I appreciate is the fact that he's introducing new topics and he's allowing me as a student to have my own perspective on it. And that's why I continue to watch his stuff. He allows me to hear what he's saying and have my own perspective. And sometimes we say the same thing. Sometimes we won't. But sometimes we will say the same thing, and I genuinely appreciate that. Thank you for allowing that.
So it's like, okay. Wait, who else? Well, can we make one final thing, man?
I would also say that it's almost like the comment that was made last class about eating pork with a Muslim father. It's like, it's a form of disrespect. Like when you ask somebody to do that, it's like, it's a form of disrespect.
Yeah, totally, man. Wait, all right, go ahead. What do you think?
My problem with her isn't the fact that she was like ignorant on hijabs. It's the fact that after she asked for a private room and explained that it was a religious...
She still said no.
She still said no.
Yeah,
so.
I know. That seems... But, maybe it's really busy. There's a million people. Look at me. I'm the guy that's trying to make excuses for a 71-year-old black woman who's clearly being ignorant and racist. And I'm like, I'm doing... You hear what I'm doing? I'm doing the thing that... So a lot of you complain that like, well, when you tell you about racism, you say, yes, but it might have been this other thing, and it might have been that. And here I am doing that for a 71-year-old black woman. I'm like, y'all, maybe she did this, or maybe she was that.
But what you're actually doing is you're humanizing her. And I say this a lot on my channel. You're humanizing her. Because, let's be honest, if you're a 71-year-old woman, let's say you're at a Clippers game, whatever game she's at, you see 200 people charging at you, not charging like literally, but 200 people in line. You see this one woman coming up. You see like 100 people behind her. She asked for a private room. They told you have to scan in 20 people every 10 minutes. What do you do? Of course, you would probably handle it differently. I would handle it differently. But let's put things into a different perspective. Of course, there are times where, the person is 100% in the wrong, but if you can, try to humanize people. Anyways, I'll catch y'all on the next one.